very warm welcome to all the participants in today's webinar. This is our 78th webinar in our talk series. A special welcome to speaker Mr. Jishnu Dasgupta, who plays bass guitar and manages the award-winning band Swarathma, for making time to be with us here today. Before we introduce our speaker and hand over to Mr. Jishnu, a little information for those who were not there earlier and have joined us only today. Rtambhara Wellness is a collective of like-minded individuals that look at wellness in a holistic way, not just the body, but the mind as well, and all through the practice of knowledge and wisdom that comes from our ancient Indian scriptures and heritage. We conduct global programs and retreats for wellness that look at personal transformation, and the details are available on our website, rtambharawellness.com. We also conduct webinars regularly, and our earlier talks are uploaded on YouTube under Rtambhara Wellness. If you'd like to be part of our community, please post your contact details, cell number, email ID, so that we can add you to our groups. In today's session, we have the talk and music for 40 to 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer. Feel free to post your questions on the chat function, and Jishnu will answer any questions after his talk. So let's get on with today's session and learn about Jishnu's life journey, his music, and his award-winning band Swarathma. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Mr. Jishnu Dasgupta to you all. He's armed with degrees from NIT and XLRI. Jishnu was set for a corporate career in marketing until he joined folk rock band Swarathma. He plays bass guitar and manages the award-winning act. Swarathma is a genre-defining, homegrown act, having played hundreds of shows to thousands of people in the country and around the world. Their music is Indian folk blended with contemporary rock, blues, and reggae. But what makes their music special is the issues and subjects they sing about, from river conflicts to politics, from personal journeys to celebrations of love. While describing their music, Rolling Stone magazine called it the sound of guitar, bass, drums, and India, and their latest single Mushkil Mein Jeena made it to the Apple Music list of the top 100 songs of 2020. Their song Beta Sweater Pehno was recently featured on the soundtrack of the acclaimed web series The Family Man Season 2. With a visually electric, high-energy stage act, Swarathma creates a celebratory atmosphere with music, theatrical elements, and interactivity. When not playing music or managing the band, Jishnu is a full-time dad to his two sons, Alap and Abir. He's into surfing, scuba diving, and yoga, but what gives him the most genuine joy is meaningful conversation, and we hope to do that today. So over to you, Jishnu. I'd like to start by asking you a few questions that interest us all, and we hope you cover them in your talk. Firstly, you seem to have a successful management career ahead of you, and you gave it up. Why? Secondly, when did you realize your passion was music? And thirdly, what happens to you when you are deep into creating or playing music? Can you describe that experience for us? I'll leave you now to tell us your story. Over to you, Jishnu.
Good evening, friends of Rtambhara. It is an absolute joy. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you, Binaji, for that gracious introduction and for having me as a part of your community for this evening and allowing me to share my part of the story, and in the hope of having all of you as a part of my story and allowing me to be a part of yours as well. So quite frankly, that introduction was really overwhelming. Thank you so much for your warm and kind words. I hope to do justice to them in being able to share my story with you. And yes, thank you for your questions. And I do hope I will address them as we go forward. I will keep them in mind. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to sharing my story, and with the basic title and the idea of where do these songs come from. And even though when people hear about rock bands or folk music or independent songs and the world of musicians, they talk about a lot of things. They talk about the glamour and the excitement and the euphoria. But the truth is that all of them stem from the songs. If there weren't songs, none of these other things would exist. So, which is why I hope that in tracing the wellspring of these songs, we will find out a little more. And, I will be able to explain to you and share with you where all of this really springs forth from. So, with that, let me start by sharing a little bit of my story. A large part of the people responsible for my origins are on this call. I'd love to welcome my father and mother. Shantanu and Shama Dasgupta are on this call. My aunt from London is tuning in as well, Shoma Kaki, sorry. Thank you so much for joining. It's like extended family here, right here. And I'm very, very happy to be able to share my story in a setting like this among friends, close, and near, dear, and everyone. So my story begins in Trivandrum, in Kerala, back in 1978, which is when I was born. And for the large part of my early years, music was always a part of my life, with my father singing Rabindra Songit every weekend. And one of my regrets, if you will, is that he always tried to teach me. He always tried to share his music with me. But even though I did learn a little bit, I wasn't ever really passionate about it, or I couldn't really get behind it. So much so that my brush with music really came when I went to engineering college in Allahabad, which is when I realized that I love the idea of sharing music with others. So whenever there would be musicians jamming or practicing or getting ready for some or other kind of concert, I would always want to be there, even if I wasn't really singing or playing or anything, because I never really had any training as such. And I was always keen to be around musicians and around, I realized later, that energy that flows between people who are able to honestly share themselves, a part of themselves, through the language of music. Now, engineering college got over. I got placed with a software company. I traveled abroad. I worked in various cities. And even wherever I went, I used to always seek out fellow musicians to jam with. The same happened when I went to XLRI Jamshedpur. I finished my MBA in marketing. I joined ITC Limited, a great career and all of that stuff. And I found myself in Bangalore when, as before, I sought out a fellow musician and joined this band called Swarathma. Now, it would be good at this point to share that until this point, my life had a fairly predictable career trajectory. I was into music, yes, but it was a hobby. It was never really something that I thought I could do as a career or as a profession. It was always something that gave me joy, but on the side. But when I joined Swarathma, and this is one of the answers to the question, joined a band for the first time that was more serious about music than I was. By that I mean, in all my previous bands, I used to be the one to say, guys, come on, let's practice, let's meet, let's jam, let's pick up a song, let's organize a show. But with Swarathma, there was already a very, very clear idea of what our sound is, what are we going to sing about. We are going to compose songs that speak of these things. And this is our whole ideology. And I was really inspired by that. And for the first time, I felt that I was joining a group of people from whom I could learn, from whom I could be inspired. And through that course of year of about 2007, 2008, there was this fantastic series of events that happened that showed us that with Swarathma, we were sitting on something that was bigger than all of us combined. And it came to pass that during that course of that period, I realized that there is something within me that I have to say that Swarathma could be the vehicle of. But, real life has its own challenges, and quitting a job like that and taking up music as a career is never an easy decision. And I think the credit for the large part goes to my wife, Shreya Dasgupta, who at the time said that, we'll figure it out. Why don't you give it a shot and do what it is that you love? And with that support and with that backing, or rather wind beneath my wings, so to speak, I took that plunge. And here I am talking to you after all these years with all of the good things that have happened to us that you mentioned. And we're filled with gratitude for what has happened. And we look with hope towards what I hope is going to come. Now, with that said, I'd like to talk about the twin disciplines of astronomy and music. Now, the reason I bring up astronomy is that the ancient Greeks believed that music and astronomy are two sides of the same coin. Now, this might seem confusing at first, but the point is that the Greeks said that astronomy is the study of observable heavenly objects, and music is about the hidden internal objects. And this is why sometimes music helps us make sense of the world around us in a way that no human language can. Nothing you read or nothing you listen to in the terms of words spoken to you can give you as much solace, peace, inspiration, and various gamut of different emotions that music can. And there is a way that music gets under your skin and helps you make sense of those big immovable pieces inside you, and makes something shift and helps you understand the world, make sense of the world in a better way. Now, do bear that in mind while I tell you about what makes Swarathma write these songs and how we choose to do all of these things. Now, the point with a musician or a composer, one of the things that you must be able to do is to feel strongly about the world, about your specific reality. And the way that it functions is that when you feel strongly about the world, when it affects you, then you're able to express that in whatever way that you choose. Now, whatever affects you strongly, there are different ways that people choose. When they're affected strongly, they may take up arms and fight for a cause, maybe, join a protest or a candlelight vigil, or tweet from your armchair, or try to ignore it so that it doesn't affect you. There could be various ways you deal with what affects you strongly. The way that Swarathma deals with it is to absorb and imbibe all of that is happening around us, and then process that and express that in musical form. And the pure selfish reason why we do that is so that it helps us feel better, feel more settled about the things that we are dealing with in life. For example, let me tell you a story about my bandmate, Vasu Dixit, who sings, who plays guitar, and composes many of the songs. He was traveling by train one day between the cities of Mysore and Bangalore. And now this was at the height of the Kaveri River conflict that rages even now. I mean, it is a deeply contentious issue that has gone on for over 200 years between which of the states, Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, should get how much of the Kaveri's water. And now, the people on one side of the border believe that the river belongs to them, and the people on the other believe the opposite. And there has been incidents of violence and rioting, and people have lost their lives. And it's a deeply political, but it's a politically charged issue that people tend to flare up over and things like that. Now, the conversation that Vasu overheard in the train was between an old lady and some young farmers. And the farmers, of course, believed, and they argued vehemently that, the river is Kaveri Ma is ours and we must have the water. And, the discussion went on for some time. And then the old lady got up, picked up her things, and it was time for her to get off the train. And she turned back at them and said, all of that is fine, but have you ever wondered what the river feels? Now, this thought sparked off a series of emotions in Vasu as a songwriter. It talked about, we fight over nature as if it belongs to us, not really remembering that it is actually the opposite. And we believe that we can control and we can shape the way nature is to suit our needs. But have you ever wondered what nature herself feels, or what the river herself is thinking? Which is where the song came up called Pyasi. Now, I shall take the liberty of playing a little bit of that music video with you, with your permission. And this is, I shall share the screen.
अश्क तो बहने दो, पानी हूँ पानी रहने दो।
अश्क तो बहने दो, पानी हूँ पानी रहने दो।
कहाँ से आई
किसकी बोली बोना है अब,
किसने है ये खेल रचाया, पुतला बना के तुमको नचाया रे। प्यासी हूँ मैं तुमको पिला के, थक गई हूँ मोड़ों पे रुक के। तू भी लौट जा रे,
घर समुंदर भूल गई हूँ, राख को क्यों मुझ में बहाया, टूटे किनारों पे क्यों झुकाया सर।
प्यासी हूँ मैं तुमको पिला के, थक गई हूँ मोड़ों पे रुक के। प्यासी हूँ मैं तुमको पिला के, थक गई हूँ मोड़ों पे रुक के। अश्क तो बहने दो, पानी हूँ पानी रहने दो।
Yeah.
So that was Pyasi, and we are very fortunate to have had the voice of Shubha Mudgalji. She graciously consented to share her voice with us on that song. For the music video, we chose the story of water as a fragile resource rather than a river herself. And the story, goes on to talk about how we tend to take water for granted, and there's this deep divide between the water haves and the water have-nots. So that's really how the story of Pyasi began. And as I was talking about the way that you let the world affect you, and it comes out in the form of a song. Now, I'd like to talk about politics. Now, politics is, it's the P word. It's the one word that, depending on which side of the spectrum you are on, you may hold diametrically opposite views. And we live now in a time where there is the absolute death of nuance, and that things only exist in black and white. And it is a very difficult time to speak about politics. And it has been this way for several years. So back in the day, there was a time when we were noodling around with an idea of a song about politics, because we felt like talking about the way things were around us. Now, there is a reason why music is what it is, and that it allows messages to pass through your system without prejudice of who it is or what is the background of the person who's saying it. Now, if I were to stand up on a pedestal and say, politics according to me is X, Y, and Z, and listen to me. Now, unless I had a certain gumption to have that, political aspiration, there is no real reason that somebody should listen to me and my preaching. However, if I make you smile or grin or laugh, or I use sarcasm or satire as a tool, I have a little nudge and say, see what's going on, the chances of you listening to me are higher, which goes on for us that music has often become the sugar coating on a bitter pill. It allows us to talk about difficult things without really our pride and egos getting in the way. So there was one time in the studio, in the jam room, that we were messing around. A lot of the creativity happens when you mess around, where you're not really driven as much by structure and rules as you are by following a feeling and seeing where it leads. Now, to explain how that happened, I'm going to try to recreate what happened in the jam room several years ago by showing you what was transpiring, who was playing what. You saw the members of the band. There are people who play guitar and drums, and I play bass, and there's a singer and things like that. Now, what exactly happened on that one day is that there was a reggae groove floating around. Now, by that I mean the world of Bob Marley and the protest music and things like that. And for that to happen, there is almost immediately a feeling of talking about something that is for, let's say, the greater good, or something important and something bigger than ourselves. So this reggae groove was floating around, and we were feeling like, perhaps this is going to give us the opportunity to talk about this subject of politics. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen again and take you through that moment. Now, let me see if you could raise your hand that if you can hear me. Perfect. And you can hear me as well over this. Perfect. Now, this is what happened. Now, a reggae groove is characterized by that upbeat. It's on the off. It's on the 1 and 2 and. So this groove was floating around in the jam pad. Vasu was playing it until the drummer decided that he wanted to come in with this little beat to add to it. So he began to add the snare, but he wasn't playing it full. He was playing it subdued so that the naughtiness in it comes out. Now it's beginning to sound like something interesting. So me, the bass player, I decide to join in with and this is a very hooky, addictive kind of a line. I'm going bum 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 bum. Now this is absolutely the right place for my guitar player to come in with something equally naughty. Now it's really beginning to cook. You know, you've got like 3 or 4 spices in. And that's when Vasu came up with this beautiful melody which goes something like na 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 na. Now with this, we got this idea. We have this very, very beautiful space. Now, what can we use here to talk about politics? This is where we took the help of our lyricist Imran Chaudhary from Kolkata, who came up with the phrase "topi wale" as a euphemism for anybody in power. This does not have any reference to any particular party or any of that sort, but it talks about people who misuse power or misuse the mandate given to them for their own personal gain. And so it came to pass like this. Sar pe haath dale, khali pet mare, ho sar pe haath dale, khali pet mare, topi wale. झुके तू पैरों को छू ले, पर अपना पिछू संभाल ले, हाथों को तू जोड़े, खरीद ले घोड़े, यही तो राजनीति है भैया, बोले मेरी मैया. So that's how it worked, and that was the birth of the song Topi Wale, which went on to become the title track of our second album released in 2012. It became a part of the anti-corruption movement that happened with Anna Hazare and so on and so forth. So we had a really, really wonderful time creating it. And this, for example, the songs come from a feeling that this is something we want to talk about. We want to speak in a certain tone and manner. And music allows us to do that with the humility and the courage together to speak about something as thorny as this, using the tools of music, using a certain genre and what it entails, and bringing that together with our own experiences and our own expression to create this. So that's really the story of the song Topi Wale. With that, I'd like to address that question that you spoke of, Binaji, which is, when you're in that mood of creativity, how do you feel? Now, if you are lucky, there is a certain phenomenon that happens, which has been spoken about by several great musicians. Most recently, I heard this in a documentary by Quincy Jones, you know, the legendary producer, musician, composer, best known for his work with Michael Jackson and of course with several others. He used this phrase, God walks through the room. You know, when God walks through the room, you just happen to be there at the right place at the right time. And the inspiration doesn't really come more from what you created. It is more from how you had your antennas up, you had your emotions in the right place, and you could capture that moment and express it in the right way. So when that really happens, and that happens rarely, and I think a part of creativity, the part of all the riyaz that people do, the practice and the hard work, is in being able to live in that state of flow. Do we live in a state of flow? Not as often as we wish. In fact, it doesn't happen nearly as much as we would like. But when it does, that's what it truly feels like. Now, speaking of that, I'd like to share with you another song and another journey behind that. And this has got to do with an emotion, not really so much about a social issue, but more of what we feel as humans when we go through our life in this society. And that is the feeling of regret. Now, regret is a universal emotion. You know, it's got really universal ramifications. Everyone feels regret. I mean, you might regret listening to this. You know, every moment allows you another opportunity to say, "Oh man, I wish it was different." So there was a time when I was dealing with or understanding the emotion of regret. I happened to see a few TED Talks around it, and the whole idea of how people look in the rearview mirror and wish that the objects in the mirror were different and things like that. And I was at the home of a friend, and we were in the kitchen, I remember, and there was this particular riff that I'll play for you that just happened to be. Now, I have no real way of explaining it, except the only other explanation is that I was learning to play the kind of chords that that I'm going to share with you now. Now, in the process of learning, a lot of times you realize that things that you want to say, you now have the tools to do so. Now, this is where it began. It began with what is called a major seventh chord. And there was this melody that just kind of wafted its way through the kitchen along with the rest of the aromas and went na 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 na. And I couldn't stop playing it. I mean, I just kept doing this over and over again until people around me got a little bothered by it. You know, play something else. You know, you've been playing this for a while. And it had a certain wistful quality to it. It had a certain, a feeling of not quite being able to say what you want to, of having a feeling that perhaps some part of life has passed you by and things like that. That's when we chose to record this little piece and keep this. I remember very clearly I was in the bathroom when the words related to regret came to me. And Hindi has this, or Urdu rather, has this very beautiful word, kash, which lends itself perfectly to the way that the melody was initially composed, which had a little, a single syllable introduction, which goes like, na, 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 na. And it went, kash, maine baat apni suni, hoti to zindagi aaj, kahin aur hi le jati, par baithe hain abhi, apni zid ke saaye mein, गाते हैं यही गीत इसके बारे में. So that's where the first mukhra and the first part of the melody came in. It's a combination of learning to play a chord, having a wistful sort of feeling, and then thinking deeply enough about an emotion to engage with it and write something that perhaps resonates with others who feel the same thing. And with that, the song came to be. It is called Kash and also released in 2018 as part of our third album. And we have found this song, along with others, resonating with people, not necessarily because you feel the same things that we did as a band writing the song, but the fact that when you listen to this song or when you absorb any piece of art, you do so with the filter of your own reality, your own consciousness. And that makes that piece of art yours forever. And that's the beauty of it. When you let it go, then it becomes not yours anymore. It doesn't remain yours anymore. So that's one of the most beautiful things of choosing to live a life in art, where you can write, compose, paint, sculpt things that you feel strongly about, and then others can choose to make that their own. Now, this brings me back to the ancient Greeks, who said that music and astronomy are two sides of the same coin. And and what they knew well before we did is that music is an essential thing for us. It is a part of every human occasion that has deep emotion. Now, whether that's a funeral or a marriage or the birth of a child or whatever deep human emotion that you can talk about, a victory at a sporting event, there's always a chant, a music that is a big part of that occasion. And the reason that is so is that music allows us to make sense of what's happening inside us in a way that no human language can. And with that, I'd like to conclude this part of my sharing of experiences with you. And we have been blessed with the ability of being able to feel strongly and use those feelings along with the knowledge of our craft and come up with pieces of music that have resonated with us over the years with people such as yourselves. I dedicate a large part of this entire thing to the members of my band, who I wish we could have been together to share this with you in the form of a performance. There is Vasu Dixit, who I mentioned, as vocals and guitar, Varun Murli, who plays the guitars and production. We have Sanjeev Nayak, who plays the violin, and the four of us represent the current members of the band. There have, of course, been people who have been with us in the past who have gone their separate ways, but we owe to them, of course, a debt of gratitude for sharing themselves with us on our journey. The most important thing we realize as a part of this team is that somehow we are greater than the sum of our parts. You take me individually, if I have managed to do some justice to the songs and the entire experience, trust me on this, when more of us get together, the experience is greater. It's a multiple of what happens. And that speaks about the unique chemistry that bands enjoy, and we are able to do that and create this experience of community that is shared and allows us to be a part of people's lives in an organic way. So with that, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for all of, I'm seeing a lot of beautiful messages from my family, my aunt and uncle from Delhi, Rita, Jetty, and my uncles responding on the chat. It's so great to see all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for making this a session with my extended family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vishnu. I have to say it's been exhilarating, entertaining, and extremely insightful. And there's a very, very strong thread of spirituality in everything that you spoke today. And thank you so much for that, and taking us so deep into this music world. I was absolutely mesmerized. Thank you so much.